This is my Poke the Pig project. I'm going to first demonstrate it and then explain the code a little bit. So as you can see immediately of the main screen, it looks kind of weird because it's not an actual HTML structure. Like if you go into inspect element, you can see this is just a canvas. These aren't real HTML buttons. So that makes it much more difficult to interact with and, well, just to program in general, because you have to now implement all the logic that HTML or your browser would do for you. And the only reason I did this just because I was only doing it for a challenge. If I wanted to be pragmatic, I wouldn't have done it. So also you can see I say arrow keys to choose Z to submit, so your mouse doesn't actually work. I'm clicking right now and nothing's happening. This is because getting the location of the mouse or the cursor is really annoying in JavaScript, and the best I could really do is like find the absolute position relative to the top left corner, but this doesn't really work because on different browsers and screens it's going to be zoomed in differently, or like the aspect ratio will be different. Maybe for example here I have another window open, so the browser is smaller. It will still look at the same, it will still have the same coordinate like right here. So, but the buttons have actually moved. So if I wanted to check, oh, is the cursor's X position greater than this but less than this, it wouldn't work at all. I'd have to have some really complicated system for keeping track of the window size and the font and everything, and that'd just be way too annoying. So I stuck with arrow keys. So see, I have, I'm pressing left and right. When I press left, so there's a darker button and a lighter button. Lighter indicates that that's the selected button currently. So I'm pressing left, but nothing is happening because it's already the most left. I didn't have it loop over. But when I press right, it moves to this animal button. Now if I press Z, you see it takes you to this screen. This is the poke the track screen. See, I have this image here, so I have demonstrated that I can draw images. I have these more buttons, and now if I use left and right, it still iterates over these first two, but then when I press down, it can move across, well, across rows. So this is, you know, a little bit more complicated, because if I have a variable keeping track of which button I'm on, so maybe this is button 0, this is 1, this is 2, I'd have to say, oh, if you're on button 0 and you press down, it's not intuitive what number that would go to. So here it's +2, but what about here? If you press down again, well, I guess it'd also be +2, but what about like right here? If you press down, you know that you want to be to the back button. So there's a lot of logic. Well, not that much, but some related to that. It's not completely straightforward. So yeah, here, left, right, up and down work. If I press right again right now, nothing happens because it's already the rightmost. Same with pressing up here. Now the back button, it also, you can go up and down from it, and left and right don't do anything. But you can see that if I'm coming from the right side, so see cinema is selected and then I go to back, when I press up again, it goes back to cinema. But if I'm on this beauty and I press down and back up, now it goes to the beauty. So it remembers the last button you were on in the second row, and uses that when you're going back up. And see, the back button works. It brings you back here. Now I'll show you these. So here it was pick the track, and I meant track as in like a music. So each one of these represents a theme. For example, if I press Z right now, well, going on them without pressing Z doesn't do anything, but selecting it with Z, see, it starts playing the song. It updates this image, and it puts some text. And if I go to a different one, like select beauty, now there's new text, a new image, and a new theme. So this works the same for cinema and Murasaki. And if I go out of here back, it still keeps playing the song, and when I go to track again, it remembers what it was on, so it doesn't reset. And this was deliberate. So then, well, yeah, that's it for here. But now, oh wait. Okay, I didn't realize that pressing up and down breaks it over here. I guess I can fix that after, but I don't think it's that important. I guess I didn't do enough bug testing. But here in Animal, that's it for this track menu. And Animal is a second menu here. You see it's a little bit more complicated. If I just left it, it would keep playing the music, but it's probably hard to hear me with it on, so I'm going to reload the page to get rid of it. Okay, so this animal menu, the first thing you might notice is that over here, there's a timer going down. 2, 1. When it resets, the text didn't change this time, but 1 second. There it changes. So over here, there's some Japanese text, and this is just a name of an animal in Japanese. And then every time the timer resets, you see it has a new animal. So this is, each one of these animals up here corresponds with one down here. So instead of having you press the animal and then have the text show up to reflect what animal you just chose, the text shows up some random animal, and then it's your job to press the associated text for that animal. So here this says tori, and it means bird, so you would be expected to press bird here. This one is dog, so you see if I press dog, look what happens. It has a new animal, and it goes from 10 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. So how this works is that it's kind of a game where your goal is to press each button for each animal as fast as you can, so that you complete all 10 before the timer runs out. So since it's 10 seconds and you have 10 to do, you have to be, well, it's not exactly 10 seconds, but you have to be around 1 per second or faster. And again, the back button works here. But I'll try to show you a demonstration of what happens when you get to 10. So, cat, horse, dog, bird, cat, dog. Okay, so now you see it said level 1 before, but now it's level 2. And you see now you have to have 11. But the time limit, which was 10 seconds before, is still 10 seconds now. So you see every level, each time you clear all the animals, your level increases, and then with each level, the number of animals you have to complete gets higher and higher. So you can see that it gets more difficult and more difficult as you go on, because the time stays constant, so you have to do more animals per second. And you could try this if you want and see what level you get to. I got to level 6 earlier, but I kind of got lucky. I'm not sure if it's possible to get to level 7 without spending like a few hours on it, because it starts to get really demanding. And you see if I go back now, and then over here again, it remembers your level. So it doesn't reset to level 1. And yeah, that's about it. Also just wanted to point out that all the text is kind of centered. So see, even when it says 10 seconds, this string is slightly longer. And you see it kind of moves a bit, because it's moving dynamically to stay in the center, which I had to program specifically. Okay, so here's the main file, index.ts. TypeScript. These two are the same file. I just have 2 windows to make it easier to show multiple things at once. And it's kind of convoluted because each screen has its own code, and then the code for each screen kind of has to do with some of the other screens. Like here, I have to remember to when you press animal, it has to reset the timer and set a new animal. Stuff like that. So the main driver here is this block, set interval, set interval just has this, I'm guessing you already know, it runs this code every 10 milliseconds, which creates the loop. So here, draw rect, this just creates the background rectangle, this gray here, and since it comes first, it will just clear anything else on the screen. And that way, I don't have to worry about specifically clearing old buttons or something when I want to update them. I just draw on top of it, and then I have a blank canvas. Then I have this window game screen, and how this window notation works is that game screen is a string, and window of game string is the function called game screen. So basically this is the same as writing something like switch game screen, and then I'd have like case main menu calling main menu. But this is kind of unoptimal because I'm repeating myself so much, so this kind of just automates that. Now, the initial game screen, as you can see up here, is main menu. So at the start, it's just going to run the main menu function. You can see, as you can tell from the name, game screen, this just keeps track of what screen the game is on. So when you go to the track, when you enter on the track menu, the game screen would be track menu, and then here it would be animal menu. Oh. Right, so see, it has this draw text where it's writing poke the ... as you can see here. Then it's drawing these two buttons, track and animal, and then it has the controls at the bottom. So this is pretty short, only 4 lines for each of the 4 elements, basically. But each one of these has a lot more lines. So like draw text. I have to actually interact with CTX, which is the actual low-level method. Here, you take the canvas, which is this element here, the actual HTML, and then this method getContextToD, and from there this provides more methods like ctx.fill and closePath, which actually draws things. But this would be really annoying to write out every time, so I first made a few abstraction functions and then just kind of layered those. So yeah, the main menu works fine, but this, as you can see, doesn't have any logic regarding keyboard input, and specifically what happens when you press Z. So that's all at the bottom here. Document.onKeyDown. This runs whenever you press any keys, which includes the arrow keys, and then it looks, okay, what key did you press? So in JavaScript there are key codes. So 37 I commented here is the left arrow, 39 is right arrow, and so on, with Z being 90. So you can see with the left, for game screens, for main menu specifically, I can just set the selected button to 0. So this is 0 selected button, this is 1. And selected button is the variable that keeps track of which button is highlighted, selected. Then right arrow does the same with 1. And the reason they show up as different colors is because the draw button function here, it takes an index, 0 and 1, and then it looks if that index matches the selected button. So see, here I'm basically defining track as the 0 button and then animal as the 1 button. So since after pressing right arrow, selected button equals 1, then draw button, the animal, which has the 1 index, here it checks, oh, it's selected, it is the selected one, and then it sets its color to this lighter shade of blue, which is rendered over here in draw rect. Here. it says fill style and then fills it. Since we're talking about the arrows, I'll also explain over here the up and down, left, right. It checks if it's either 1 or 3. So this is 1, and this is 3. So it knows if it's either of these, then we have an option to go left. And if it does, then it just subtracts 1. Because if this is 1, then subtracting 1 would be 0, which is to the left. And here, if it's 3, subtracting 1 would be 2, which is to the left. With the right arrow, it's kind of the reverse. If it's 0 or 2, it adds 1. So it gets either to 1 or 3. And then up and down arrow, it's the same, except it looks if you're on one of the bottom or the top, and then subtracts 2 or adds 2. Because if you're here on delivery and you add 2, you're going 1, 2, and it gets here to beauty. Same with this and subtracting, so it's all kind of straightforward. Then only on the down arrow, it looks at, hold on. Okay, yeah, so if it's already on the second row, then it would set it to this back button. And here it's important, the extra code is that it's remembering which button you press last. So then here, yeah, if you're pressing up when you're on the 4th button, then, well, technically it's the 5th, then it sets it to your last selection before you went onto the back button. Z is the more complicated one. See, if you're on the main menu, then it just sets it on. I have this array, so since this is the index 0, this is index 1, it maps to a selected button easily. So then we just change the game screen to that. And now, as you know, the whole screen will be cleared each time from the background up over here with this draw rect. And then, since window game screen runs the function called the value of game screen, and it's going to be set to like track menu if our selected button is 0, then this says run the function called track menu, which is up here. So the track menu, it renders this image, which it looks at this, where is it? Track title, select the track. So in HTML, I have this list of images, and then each one has an ID of the same track, well, the theme. So delivery has this delivery ID. Then I just say, okay, whatever one is selected, which looks at this, which is used for this selected track. And this isn't the same as selected button, because see, for example, beauty is the selected button, but it's not the selected track because I haven't pressed Z. And now it's the selected track. So yeah, it takes that image, then it looks at the width of the image to decide where to position it. So I'm not going to explain any more positioning after this because it's kind of tedious to explain. Basically, look, 300 is the center. So we want it centered. Since the canvas is 600 pixels wide, which I set here, we know that we want it, the midpoint of the image, to equal 300. Now, we can't just put the image at 300 because then this corner would be right here. And then to understand where we should put it, we look at half the width and subtract that. So then it's in the middle. And as you can see here, width, which is the width of the image element, as I said, was defined over here, divides it by 2, and then subtracts it from 300. Then we have the text, which again just looks at the selected track and then picks it from this track text variable here, which I listed out, and then it draws each button, which it has this position, and then the draw button function already looks at how long your text is, and then centers it accordingly inside the button. So that's why even though Cinema and Murasaki are different lengths, they're still both centered. I didn't have to explicitly set their text. I only explicitly set the button's text. I didn't have to explicitly set the text's exposition, but I had to set the button's exposition. Same with this back button. Then, when you're pressing Z, here you would be, for both menus, if the selected button is 4, we know it's the back button, so we just set it to, we set the screen to main menu. And if it's the track menu, then you see first we pause any audio. So we pause any existing audio, and then, so we want to stop the previous and then play the new one, which would be here. The file names, I can, see I have this media folder where all the images and the music come from. So it can just look at media and then takes the name of the song, so which is in this array, and then adds .ybm. So then it just plays it and sets it to loop. But I'm not going to show it looping because that'd take a long time for it to finish. And then it also sets the selected track, so this is where it changes. And then there's animal, which is probably more complicated. Here, so this, first I'm going to show the function that's running animal menu, again from this. And you can see it takes the Japanese text of the animal, draws that over here, and since they're all the same width, I don't have to calculate anything, because it's always one kanji character and then 2 hiragana characters. Then, so here's the difference. It looks at the time, which is what time was it when you first entered, or when this loop started. So you see 10 seconds, so like 4 seconds ago right now, that's when it was started. So this 2 means the time from that to now was 8 seconds, because we're subtracting it from 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2, and that's why I showed 2. And if it's below 0, so since it's rounded, you'll never see, like, it'll still be fine user interface or user experience. The seconds look nice. And then it just runs this reset animal, which also happens when you enter the menu. Where is it? Reset animal here. And all this does is it sets the time to when you just started. It calculates how many levels you're going to need to do, which is just 9 plus the level. So 1, 9 plus 10, 1 plus 9 is 10. And then it runs this new animal function, which just randomizes what the current animal to get is set to. Here I have this text. This is the main text that's happening here. It looks kind of complicated, but it's just the level, then how much you need to do divided out of, well, it's not a real division, it's just showing you a slash, out of how many you have to do total. So to do is how much you have left, not how many you have to do initially. And then difference is what we just calculated here, the time difference between when you started and now, showing your remaining time. Then we're just rendering these buttons using the English text. And again, draw button already looks at your selected button. So like bird is selected now, and now cat selected, so we don't have to worry about it here. And finally, when you press Z, it splits based on whether you're right. So the selection matches up with the correct animal, this animal variable, then it subtracts how many you have to do. So say it's at 10, I press horse, and now it goes to 9. That's to do being subtracted. And if it's 0, we know they're completely done, the level. And so we go to the next level and then start the new animal. And either way, we want a new animal here. Because if you fail, if you get it right, but it's not done yet, you still have to get a new animal, because otherwise, like here, the cat is showing up, then they could just spam cat, and they'd win without having to change anything. Else this runs if you fail, so we just want to reset their progress. So you see like bird, cat, I'm at 8 out of 10, then I press horse, and it fails. So that wasn't the time running out. See 8 out of 10, I'm going to bird. Sorry. It was at 3 seconds, but it went to 9. Went back to 10 because I failed by pressing bird. Yeah, that's about it. This was kind of complicated. I didn't have a very organized system for drawing the menus, and if I had maybe a few dozen menus, then this would very quickly become unmaintainable. So I would be forced to come up with a smarter system for handling it, with probably more total abstraction, and also probably different files. Because here I was able to get away with just using one index file, or one JavaScript file, which, well, it's TypeScript and then compiled to JavaScript over here. And I haven't spoken about TypeScript before, but basically it makes it easy to find errors. Like here this is the TypeScript compiler. It finds no errors, but what if, for example, I messed up and did something like this, where I'm setting one of the menu options to some other type besides string, then it instantly sees, oh, menus is probably supposed to be only strings because that's what you set it to initially, and now you're not doing that. But if I had, for example, the first element as true, then we get some other error related to it. But right here, this is fine, because it sees, oh, you probably want some Boolean variables. And another thing it does is that some JavaScript features aren't available in all versions. So it's able to take a convenient version, like right here, this backtick expression lets me use $ curly braces to input something, input a variable inside a string. But that's not supported on all of them. So you see when it's compiled down, it changes to use this concat method every time. Which is not as clean if you're actually looking at it from here. But yeah, same with like it spams var instead of using const and let, because those are newer. And yeah, that's about it.